Now that Chapter 2 is coming to an end, we've had some really amazing seasons, and also the Primal season. So I ranked all 8 of these from worst to best, in my own opinion, of course. No surprise, coming in at 8th is Chapter 2 Season 6, the Primal season. Now, this season was not that enjoyable for many reasons. Number one, of course, being the makeshift that was in. I liked the idea of the makeshift weapons. Basically, off spawn, you'd get a kind of lower rarity weapon. You'd have to craft it to make it into something decent, which would mean basically the early game would have to stall out. It would make you loot a little bit more. But what ended up happening is this was clunky, awful, and just genuinely wasn't enjoyable to play at all. This also came with the Primal shotgun, which in the first couple of weeks of the season was absolutely incredibly busted to the point that it was just almost not worth playing keyboard and mouse at the time. Very happy they nerfed it, but then it was just completely useless, unfortunately. They also had cuttlefish early on in the competitive season, which were thankfully removed, and stink floppers remained throughout the entire season, which was not great. Now, unfortunately, when it came to the map changes this season, there was basically no metal in the middle of the map, which was very frustrating. I did like some of the ways that it was laid out, but given the middle of the map just had no metal, it became very rough for players landing in these spots and made them in a kind of finals situation or even in a cash cup situation just not really that good already. The middle of the map also basically just changed to orange when people were already kind of bored of this map. They were looking for big map changes, and the center of the map changed yet again when it really needed to change something different, like a biome change, a corner change, something that we've seen in Chapter 1 a lot more. So overall, a lot of the changes this season were very disappointing, and don't even get me started on the wildlife. I do not need to fight a raptor in a cash cup. Coming in at number 7 is Season 7. The season actually followed Chapter 2 Season 6. Now, this is a season that had a lot of the alien changes, but again, one of the most underwhelming changes of all time with the map was the fact that it actually just reverted almost back to the Chapter 2 Season 1 map, which was very disappointing. Again, there was a lot of frustration about the fact that we needed map changes, and we had very minimal this time. The map changes we did get, I will say, were nice. We saw some of the dishes in particular that came back, which gave some rotations and a little bit of extra loot. But again, these barely changed the dynamic of how the actual map flowed, and overall was kind of disappointing. The UFOs got removed from comp, which was great, so I'm going to focus this specifically on comp, so I'm not necessarily going to focus on them, but I know in pubs a lot of people were getting frustrated with these. And this season, they just generally had a trend to make a lot of the drop spots worse. Like Holly Hedges just became frustrating with like a zero gravity zone in it. The abductions often made these places good while it was happening, but after that really ruined them. Slurpee being a great example of a POI that just became way worse after the abduction happened. Alongside the addition of launch pads coming back to competition, which made taking height really easy, and honestly took a lot of the skill out of the end game, in particular when it comes to taking and holding high ground. We also can't forget that the alien parasites were in this game for a long time, which ruined Arena for me personally. I was getting very frustrated playing Arena and fighting players who had parasites on their head. It was very unrewarding to fight people when you'd headshot them and hit absolutely zero damage. They were faster than you. It was just generally quite frustrating to fight. I will say they added one of the best items of all time in this season, which was the inflatable. In my opinion, this is one of the most balanced items we've seen ever in Fortnite, in particular for a mobility item. So I'd definitely love to see this back in the future, maybe in some sort of themed form that would fit maybe one of the Chapter 3 seasons. Coming in at 6th place will be Chapter 2 Season 8, the current season that we're actually on as of recording this. Now, initially the map changes were underwhelming visually, definitely when I saw them change, but the crash sites really added a good dynamic to this map. A ton of the loot was very welcome, with some of the good slipstream mobility too. The cube town in the middle of the map was a similar feel where we had a lot of additional loot, creating a lot of good new looting paths. Overall, it was kind of disappointing because it felt very familiar, just like we've seen every other season this chapter. However, I did like the addition of the tons of loot. Interestingly, I think this is actually probably my favorite map that there's been for off-spawn fights particularly, but it's still let down, again, because it's kind of similar to the last 7 seasons. The sideways and comp I actually like the addition of as well, because there was a risky way of gaining ammo and shields that was loud and could easily be third-partied. It did seem like Epic continually trying to put zombies into the Battle Royale mode, and this was, in my opinion, quite a good way to do it overall without having busted loot like in Season X. However, this season was heavily let down by the shadow floppers and the availability of these in competitive, and the fact that there were just far too many weeks these were dominated, and these were the meta for solo cash cups, honestly making those initial cash cups just a complete joke. Another major major letdown was the FNCS Grand Royale qualification format, where there was 32 reboot rounds, and the FNCS format itself was really bad, with I think 12 reboot rounds in there too. So just generally not good qualification systems for the FNCS itself. The finals for both of these were really good, I will add, however, but there was definitely a lack of hype, in particular for the Grand Royale, as there wasn't really much build up to it throughout the rest of the year. I think if throughout the entire of this year, Grand Royale's been built up to, this could have been a much bigger spectacle. But generally, I thought the Season 8 was good. I enjoyed playing it, I enjoyed watching it, but there just wasn't that much hype generally, and it didn't really stand out from any of the seasons previously. In 5th, I have Chapter 2 Season 1, and this is when the entire map was fresh and new, and I really liked the simplicity of the loot pool in this Season 2. There was no mobility, no crazy mythics, and the only really frustrating thing was getting grenade stacked as it was Squad's FNCS. But overall, I felt the season was really solid. Since it was the first no mobility season we'd ever had at this point, there was a huge advancement of the skill gap of the game, as you had to actually think now about your rotations you're going to make, and a lot of the really smart teams definitely shined through this season. Now, I personally would have rated this season higher if it wasn't for squads, because honestly, as a player at the time, I really didn't enjoy playing squads, as it really was a pain to get a consistent 4-stack online to play daily with everyone's life schedules. But I'm keeping an open mind now as an analyst. I think looking back, I would have really enjoyed looking at VOD reviewing, analyzing this season, as the meta was just so new and evolving at the time. In 4th, I have a controversial placing of Chapter 2 Season 2, the Duo season. And I want to say firstly, this is the season that I started to VOD review and really produce content, so this season in particular definitely has a big place in my heart. Hands down, the best part of this season was the fact that it really added to the map. There were a bunch of new POIs added, and most importantly, there really wasn't much removed. The switch from Season 1 to Season 2 felt additive, like the map was really getting built upon over time and progressed, which, as we know, unfortunately really was not the trend that we saw throughout the entire chapter. A lot of people have really good fond memories of the season, but I think it's mainly just from playing Arena. This season was either get mythics or die. There was heavy snipers, rocket launchers, miniguns, mythics. Overall, the loot pool wasn't really actually that good. Despite that being said, I definitely had a lot of fun this season, and both the Duo FNCS and Invitational were really great events. Now, this season was heavily, and I mean heavily, impacted by the aim assist changes that had come through, so a lot of the controller players were absolutely running dominant before that aim assist was nerfed in the next season. So there was a lot of ups and downs this season, there was a lot of frustrations, but when things weren't frustrating, this season was very fun to play. The final ad of one of the things that is basically loved by the entire community was the daily cups that were added in Chapter 2 Season 2. They only lasted this season, but I love getting on, playing these, watching streams of these every day. It was just very good content for the game, which is something we've really missed out on since their removal. In at number 3, I have many people's favorite, which is Chapter 2 Season 4, the Stark season. Despite this being a sequel to Avengers Endgame, the season was definitely really fun. The arena meta that was 50-50 in Stark Industries was hands down some of the most enjoyable day-to-day gameplay there's been in Chapter 2. This season, Epic really started to separate the loot pool, taking a large amount of the mythics out of the competitive side of things, and by the end of the season, there was only really the Doctor Doom's Gauntlet, which was definitely really promising, and is something that has been continued throughout the rest of this chapter. A lot of people probably don't go into pubs in Season 8 and realize how much loot there is in there that isn't in the competitive, but this was kind of the start of that. Vaults are also still prevalent in the game in Stark Industries and in Doom's Domain, which, given the loot pool had a ton of rotation items like shockwaves, and made these far too powerful in my opinion. This really was the first season I understood the power of fighting for powerful drop spots off spawn, and how that Stark Industries and Doom's Domain's battles went across multiple regions. The competitive meta was still not the best, given, like I said, there's a ton of rotational items like shockwaves and launch pads, meaning mythic drop spots like Stark Industries and Doom's Domain were way too powerful, but with a success story on EU of Mongrel, Meatro and Tayson definitely making this season great from a viewing experience. I think without some of the good FNCS storylines, I actually probably would have rated this season a lot lower in all honesty, because I think that the high level competitive was hugely carried by the fact that it was good teams doing well, but from an everyday gameplay perspective, the big fresh map changes that there were and the fun arena meta definitely bumped it up to a high 3rd place for me. Alright, in 2nd place I have Chapter 2 Season 3, which for me as a player was actually my favourite season. You'll notice a trend now that most of the seasons I like are the ones with a large amount of map changes. You know, just crazy thoughts, right? Chapter 2 Season 3 just had some really unique drop spots, like my hometown of Fortilla and also the Rig, and I really liked the fact that the entire map felt really fresh with the water level change at the start of the season. I landed basically every single game of this season at the Fortilla, and I genuinely think it was one of the best POIs that we've ever had. This season's mythics also were a little bit more balanced than the previous season of Chapter 2 Season 2, with the mythic Chug Jug and Burst AR not being anywhere near as powerful as the previous season's Skies AR. However, it did have Kit's Shockwave Launcher and Charged Shotgun, which are hella busted and incredibly frustrating to fight against, but if you had them, very, very fun to use. This unfortunately did make the solo FNCS just a lot about who can land catty and absolutely dominate with this loot, but still, I think a lot of the tournaments were still really fun. This season also brought the reduction of the headshot multiplier from 2 times to 1.5 times and heavily reduced the aim assist that had been plaguing the previous season in Chapter 2 Season 2. There's also a ton of other really good changes this season, like the removal of heavy snipers, addition of cars, and the addition of fruit boxes too. This was also one of the first summer seasons they had where they vaulted the pump shotgun and replaced it with the charge, where I did make this absolute banger video.
The charge pump really sucks. Please, can I not have to wait 10 minutes before I shoot my shot? Thank you.
Now, despite the fact that I think vaulting the pump was a bad choice, I really do like the charged shotgun and the way it fits into the game in the current season, and the way it balances out the pump shotgun, so this is the first introduction of that. I was overall disappointed with the water levels dropping so early, but it did leave us with a lot of new changes like the Fortilla, Rickety Rig, Catty Corner, at Coral Castle, and Deadpool's ship was all still there. And the addition of the Marauders and Sharks seemed to be only there to annoy me in competitive, but overall this season was definitely a banger. Alright, number 1, Chapter 2 Season 5. This, in my opinion, was the height of competitive Fortnite for Chapter 2. This is the first season where we saw a ton of map changes in the center of map, so it was welcomed at the time, where we saw obviously the sand spreading everywhere. The map definitely felt very, very different. There was a new feel, a new vibe to a lot of the POIs. I didn't necessarily like the sand tunneling that much, but still, there was a huge overall change to the map. This season we saw probably the most balanced shotgun meta we ever have, which was no pump, which obviously I don't like, but I still think it was nicely balanced, having the charge, the lever, and then the tactical shotgun, and every single shotgun kind of played its role. They all had a place in the meta, unlike currently where the lever just kind of sucks in comparison to the pump. This season by far had my favorite balance of fun arena meta, where there was some good items, there was a good meta, whilst having a great competitive scene. There wasn't anything that was too crazy in terms of the loot pool. It was competitive, and there was a great battle, great storyline across all of the FNCS and the tournaments this season too. This is probably one of the most memorable ones for me, where a ton of the top players were streaming. This is one where Benji was streaming. This is the one where we had tons of viewers on the main broadcast. There was 800,000 viewers total on Twitch because they were all invested in competition at this time. This is where Hen, Janice, and Chapix absolutely reigned supreme, had a top 5 in every single tournament that they had played as a full trio, and then ended up winning the FNCS finals as well. For me, this season just had the perfect mix of everything. It felt new and fresh, the meta felt good, felt fun to play in arena. I played tons of this season in particular. The competitive was good from low to high levels, and everything just seemed to fit well in my opinion. If you're looking for further resources to help you improve, head over to gameplan.com/Reisshub, where you can get full access to my constantly updated masterclass for just a one-time purchase of 20 Great British Pounds. This covers nearly every topic of how to play competitive games in the early, mid, and end game. And of course, hope you guys enjoyed this video and learned a lot. Peace.